Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
You may take your seat.
Please introduce yourself and spell your name.
My name's Jeffery Lacasse. Sorry. Jeffery
How are you employed, sir?
I'm an associate professor at Florida State University.
How long have you been with FSU?
I came back in 2013. I was also there from 2000 to 2008.
Have you always lived in Tallahassee?
No, I'm from California originally. I went to Phoenix for 5 years from 2008 to 2013. Really loved Tallahassee, so when I got a tenure track job here, I was excited to return in fall of 2013.
Did you have a relationship at some point with Wendi Adelson?
I did.
What was that relationship?
We met in the fall of 2013. Apologize for my voice. Let me just get a little water.
You can have water.
We started dating in the fall of 2013, September 2013. We dated casually in the fall and more seriously in the spring and summer of 2014.
When did the relationship end?
Well, that's a little tricky, but basically July of 2014.
All right, we'll walk through that a little more
Yeah.
in detail. During the time that you were dating Ms. Adelson,
Someone's either breathing on my
Is that me?
or very close to
I don't know, maybe we need to move it.
Back up and
Is it okay if I touch the microphone, or you want me
Is this about the right distance here?
I'm not sure it's you, but
Last
I'm
time-
just backing up a hair. I know,
Okay.
it's hard to get right.
maybe if you speak up, they'll just help the issue.
Yes, sir.
All right, so during the time that you were together, did you become aware of Wendi Adelson's recent divorce from Dan Markel?
I did. On our first several dates, that was the primary topic of conversation.
And were you aware that this was an unusually nasty divorce?
Yes.
During the time that you were Adelson relocating with their children to South Florida,
Yes, that was a topic of conversation, for sure.
if you know, did Wendi want that relocation to take place?
Yes, on our second date, the topic of relocation and being stuck in Tallahassee came up, and the date was ended abruptly when she went to the bathroom, returned with tears in her eyes, and just left the date because she was so upset. That was about two and a half months after it was denied.
All right.
And it
so-
continued to be a topic, but that's the
But
most-
that issue seemed to be specifically what was upsetting her on that day.
definitely was. She left a group date suddenly because it came up.
All right. And did she have family in South Florida?
Yes.
And what family was that?
Well, her brother, Charlie Adelson, Harvey Adelson, her father, and Donna Adelson, her mother, were the ones primarily that I heard about.
Were you also familiar with the litigation seeking to limit the exposure of Wendi Adelson's young sons to her mom, Donna Adelson?
Yes, in spring of 2014, yes.
And did you observe Wendi to be taking that filing seriously? Did she seem stressed or worried about it?
Every filing she took seriously, and she was stressed. I had reported to TPD that every time a motion was filed, it affected our relationship because she's very upset.
During the time that you were in a relationship with Wendi, did you have an occasion to meet her family members in South Florida?
I did. Well, I met her parents mostly up here. So I met Donna and Harvey Adelson probably 8 to 12 times up here. I met the defendant down in South Florida one time.
All right, so you only met Charlie Adelson one time.
That's correct.
When was that?
That was the evening of March 11th, 2014.
And had you already met the parents several times at that point?
Yes, probably 6, 8 times at that point, maybe more.
So they came here quite frequently.
Yes.
What about Catherine Magbanoa? Did you meet her?
She was present at the dinner that I attended on March 11th, where it was myself, the defendant, Wendi Adelson, and her went to dinner that evening, March 11th.
You're saying the defendant. Do you see the person in the courtroom
Yes,
that you had dinner with? Who's that?
that is Charles Adelson, known to me as Charlie.
Could you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Yeah, he's sitting in the center of the defense table, wearing a light blue tie and a navy blue sports coat.
All right. And so Catherine Magbanua, how was she related to this family or affiliated with the family?
I was introduced to her as Charlie's new girlfriend, essentially.
And was it your understanding that this was the first time that Wendi was meeting Catherine Magbanua as well?
That was my understanding. She was excited about Catherine Magbanua, and that was my impression, yes.
All right, so anything unusual happened at the dinner?
Well, at the dinner, Miss Magbanua mentioned that she had I guess it was her ex-common law husband, who had a criminal history that sounded very serious, and I did raise my eyebrows at that.
Did Charlie Adelson seem disturbed or upset by Catherine Magbanua mentioning that?
I don't recall him seeming disturbed, no.
All right, what about after dinner? Where'd you go next?
We went to Mr. Adelson's home, and we sat in his hot tub and had a few drinks and talked for a little while.
Who's the we that sat in the hot tub?
Yeah, myself, Wendi Adelson, Charles Adelson was in the hot tub for a while, and his then roommate, Dr. Jerome Obed.
All right, so Dr. Obed was living with Charlie Adelson at that time?
That was my understanding. He was his roommate, yeah.
All right, and where was Catherine Magbanua at that time?
She did not accompany us back to the house.
In the hot tub, did the defendant make some statements that were of interest in this case?
Yes.
What were those?
Judge, objection, motion in limine.
May continue.
Let me ask a more specific question. Adelson in the hot tub mention anything about having connections to a criminal element?
Yes, he did. He mentioned having contacts on both sides of the tracks, meaning dentists, lawyers, professional class people, but he also had people he knew that were a criminal element, yes.
And did you get more specific about anything about these people that are the criminal element?
He mentioned specifically, I repeated it to TPD, about Cuban neighborhoods where you might find that criminal element.
Okay, so he had connections to those type of people.
That's what he said,
And
yes.
what was the context of this? Was he just seemed scared about it, worried about it, or something else?
Seemed to be bragging.
I want to ask you about a meeting with Wendi at a coffee shop that occurred on June 4th, 2014. Do you recall that?
I do.
What happened at the coffee shop?
We went to the Red Eye Coffee Shop to have coffee, just to meet midday, and Miss Adelson canceled a trip that we had planned for July 11th to 17th to go see my parents, which was a big deal in the relationship, and she abruptly canceled it.
Did she offer an explanation as to why she needed to cancel the trip?
Not one that made sense. She said that she feared that we would not get back in time, and she emphasized, had to be back on the 18th to pick the kids up out of school, which would have been July 18th, 5 p.m., is my understanding. And I couldn't fathom why in the summer going through Atlanta you wouldn't be able to get back in time. It didn't make any sense to me.
So she was worried you could be delayed and she wouldn't be able to pick the kids up.
Right, and we had people who could babysit. It didn't make any sense at all, but that was what she said. That day was very important.
All right, and so that occurred on June 4th.
It did.
All right, did you see her later that evening?
I did. I went to the house to hang out with her and her children.
And is that her residence on Aqua Ridge?
Yes, ma'am.
And how was she that night? This is June 4th, right?
It is.
Okay.
She was a nervous wreck to the point where she was sick to her stomach. Asked me to get to her house as soon as possible. She was in that much distress. And she didn't have food poisoning or flu or anything obvious. She was just a nervous wreck. So I went to her house, immediately went to the store to get her Pepto-Bismol and a couple of things from the convenience store. I have the credit card receipt, is why I recall that so specifically.
And did you have any idea why she's acting? I assume this is unusual for her.
It was fairly unusual. The degree of severity was definitely unusual. But that whole week, June 4th to 9th, she was very nervous. So.
And she didn't didn't tell you it was because killers were in Tallahassee to kill Dan Markel, did she?
No, I was stunned to later find out that there was hitmen in town at the time.
Okay. So let's go forward a little bit to this TV situation. Do you know anything about Wendy's TV being broken?
I do.
And when was the TV broken, if you know?
Between June 11th and 18th, I think it's closer to the 11th, but 100% in that week.
And how do you know it was in that week?
Because we rented a movie, How to Train a Dragon 2, to give the kids a special movie night, and I have text messages where I'm discussing having seen the movie by the 18th with friends.
So you were able to refresh your memory?
Yeah, I was able to
by going
refresh
through
my,
those?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so do you get the movie, or?
Well, it was back in the day, it was Redbox, so I rented a DVD from a Redbox. It was 2014.
All right, and go over there with the movie and what happens when you arrive.
I walk in the door, and Miss Adelson asked me to look at her television because there's something wrong with the television.
And what was wrong with the television?
Well, I turned it on, and I was immediately confused because it really shouldn't have been a question. As soon as you turn the TV on, it's been struck by an object and is damaged and basically unusable.
Can you explain what the damage looked like?
Yeah, it looked like somebody stood in front of it, took their fist, and hit it like that, was my first impression.
So kind of like a shatter mark with spiders.
Yeah, there's like an impact crater, and then there's, out from that, and it's all pixelated and distorted, which makes it very difficult, or really no one would watch this TV unless you had to. And I had second thoughts about that. I looked around the room. Maybe the kids broke it, so I looked all around the room, and it didn't seem plausible that the children broke it. They're very small. This object had to be kind of heavy. I'd thrown a ball around with them. I just couldn't see how the kids could have done it.
But you didn't see how it got busted.
I didn't see it. I didn't know for sure, and I didn't know we'd be discussing this in a murder trial, so I didn't investigate further or think about it very much,
Sure.
to be honest with you. I just thought, okay.
Were there other TVs in the house?
There was a TV in the back bedroom, a similar make and model, that we had watched television with the kids before on that TV before, so yes.
Is that where you watched the movie that night?
No, I went to go hook up the DVD player in the back room. Miss Adelson insisted that it would not work and actually stopped me from even trying. So thought that was very odd, but I didn't want to argue, and it's her house, her TV, her kids, so I said, okay.
So did you watch the movie on the broken TV?
Yeah, we gave the kids movie night where we watched a movie on a broken television that was distorted enough that you could follow what was happening, but the kids are whining and crying the whole time. And I wasn't whining or crying exactly, but I was tempted to because it was pretty frustrating, and I just didn't understand, what was going on. And of course, I had related that this TV is broken, it's unwatchable, it's not covered by warranty, you're gonna have to get a new TV, and I offered to go do that for her anytime she wanted. She's a busy single mom. I'll run by Best Buy, get you a new TV. It was not like a 80-inch TV or something that was really that luxurious. It was a TV like you'd see in a dorm room, so we could have replaced it right away.
All right, did you end up getting a new TV?
No, she turned me down several times on that offer, and again, it's her house. I tried to respect her boundaries, and I said, oh, okay. But it was inconvenient because after dinner, it's nice to be able to put the kids in front of that TV while you clean up the dishes and stuff. And
Okay.
it sat there being an inconvenience for a while.
All right. I want to ask you about when is Ms. Adelson's birthday?
April 22nd,
Okay.
Earth Day.
I've got this out of order. Let's skip over that for now and go to the big fight in June. Ms. Adelson mentioned that there was a big fight toward the end of June. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that's the weekend of June 27th, 28th.
Where were you when that fight occurred?
We were in Gainesville. Miss Adelson accompanied me for a work trip, and we had that scheduled for a while, and she accompanied me on a work trip, and we ended up having a pretty big argument Saturday night in the hotel.
And did that have to do with you accusing her of seeing other men?
That was one of the issues. There'd been a lot of tension bubbling. That was the major issue. But just to give that some context, I suspected very strongly she was seeing other men. Of course, your office had confirmed recently to me that there was multiple online active dating accounts the whole time we were supposed to be exclusive. But just to give context to that, that was combined with Wendi promising me the world in June. Talking about me moving in, shouldn't get a Jeep, you should get a car, the kids' car seats will fit in. The kids should start calling you daddy was the most outrageous one. And so she's like throwing herself at me over the top in a way that felt totally disingenuous and fake. And at the same time, I think she's seeing other guys. So it just kind of boiled over. I tried to have like a serious, honest relationship conversation with her, and that didn't go very well.
So you were kind of, at least up until all of this started happening, you were kind of full steam ahead, and it seems like she was a little stop and go, hot and cold. Is that
It was a
accurate?
roller coaster, is what I would say. And I had felt since April that I was perhaps being strung along. I had that intuition. I couldn't fathom a reason why you would string a guy along like that. It didn't make any sense at the time.
All right, so we're in June, like 28th range?
Okay.
Okay, when do you come back from Gainesville?
The morning of the 29th, after this fight or this argument, we drive back. We drive back to Tallahassee. Now, I had another ride back, and I offered to take that other ride if the fight was that bad, because we could have broken up after this. That was, but she wanted to ride back with me.
You rode together?
Yeah, we rode together.
All right, so you rode back together, and then was she leaving that day?
I believe it was I thought she picked up the kids the next day from Professor Markel's house, and that's when she met Amy Adler, and that was a big deal to her.
Amy Adler was Dan's girlfriend at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so it's at some point after the big fight and the return from Gainesville, does she leave to go to South Florida?
Yeah. I never. A day or two later, she definitely leaves to return to South Florida. She's in South Florida by July 1.
All right, and was that the trip that she was there for her dad's birthday?
That's correct.
Did you attend the dad's birthday?
No, I was never invited to the dad's birthday.
All right, and were you aware what the big gift was for dad's birthday?
No.
All right, so when did you see Wendi next after she leaves to go to South, or I
Yeah.
guess after you return from Gainesville?
So during that 2-week period, we're exchanging emails, texts, long phone calls, video chats with the kids. Things are up and down, but it seemed like it's probably going to be okay. That's the impression I was given by Miss Adelson. Or I was being strung along 2 more weeks. But I see her again on the 13th when she comes back in town and is excited to have a date with me. So we had a date.
All right, so now we're at July 13th, 2014.
That's correct.
So within a week of the murder.
That's right.
Okay, tell us about your interactions with her that day.
Yeah, we went to dinner and a movie, and we returned to our house on Aqua Ridge.
All right, and did she tell you anything asked to tell you anything in confidence that evening?
Yeah, in a very serious tone of voice. The topic of conversation as we're walking up to the house is about relocation, being stuck in Tallahassee, and Danny, as the conversation always was about, Dan Markel. She said in a very serious tone of voice, "Can I tell you something in confidence?"
Objection, Your Honor. Motion to eliminate.
Now, Ms. Kappelman, you understand the court's rulings.
I think I do, Judge, but asked to approach.
Please approach. The bailiff is going to escort you out. Mr. Lacasse, you can step down from the witness stand for now.
Okay.
Please step back outside.
Place your hat face down on your chair.
Everyone can be seated. Bringing up both the motion in limine and the prior order that have been issued on this matter. The ruling that was made as to the defense motion in limine concerned the state eliciting this as a part of its case in chief. However, Mr. Rauschbaum, at this point, Ms. Adelson has specifically denied making this statement. Why is this an improper ground for the state to explore this on impeachment?
It's still hearsay, Your Honor. It's double hearsay. It's not done to
All sorts of matters that otherwise would be inadmissible can become impeachment.
judge. If Dr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson, made that statement to Mr. Lacasse, and he denied it, he could impeach him. They're impeaching another witness. That's not allowed. That's number one. Number two, I brought up
The
this issue.
impeachment of one witness's testimony through another is not allowed?
But they're impeaching her to go to his statement. They're stuck with her answer. They could have kept on cross-examining her of why they thought her answer was wrong. They can't now backdoor it through hearsay in another witness. That was the whole point of the motion. Similarly, Judge, we brought this issue up first thing this morning, sidebar, because if they were going to be allowed to do it, I was going to ask Miss Adelson other questions on this issue. They said they weren't going to do it. So I didn't ask her those questions. And I didn't ask her those questions because I didn't want to open the door to it. And I can't call Miss Adelson back as a witness because she has a Fifth Amendment right and I can't give her immunity. I brought this up for this very reason. She denied the statement yesterday. That's why I brought it up today. They can't backdoor a double hearsay statement based on a denial by that witness. Can't do it.
Ms. Kappelman.
But it's not hearsay, it's offered for impeachment. Ms. Adelson was specifically drawn to the time and place of this statement and asked if she made it. She denied it. This witness heard her make the statement. So it's now admissible to impeach her testimony.
This is not an insignificant fact or an immaterial one. Mr. Rauschbaum, if you wish to find some authority, I will give you 5 minutes to look if you have anything to argue as to this matter. Ms. Adelson has denied making the statement. She can be impeached through other witnesses regarding this matter.
Judge.
I will give you an opportunity to find some authority. If there's something more specific you can point me to other than what you're arguing right now.
Judge, I brought this up this morning so that I could front it with Miss Adelson, and we were told, you were told, that they weren't going down this path. If I'd been told something different, I would have done something different that I can no longer do. It's precisely why I went sidebar first thing in the morning.
What is your response as to that portion of the argument, Ms. Kappelman?
That's a legal argument. I was asked if I was intending to offer double hearsay. I said I would never be offering hearsay without an exception.
I assume he's making this on fairness grounds, which goes to this would have changed his strategy of how he examined the witness.
I don't know what to do about that, Judge. I can't help Mr. Rashbaum have better strategy. I was real specific with the witness to get that denial, so I'm not sure why the issue wasn't raised at that point.
Judge, I was really specific this morning that the double hearsay related to my motion in limine related to Jeffery Lacasse. You knew what I was talking about.
Hold on. My ears work perfectly well. You don't have to raise your voice. Make your argument, please.
Everyone, sidebar, knew exactly what I was talking about. And we were told, Ms. Kappelman told you as an officer of the court that she was not going down that road. And so when Ms. Adelson was on the stand, I stayed away from it not to open the door to it. She knew exactly what statement we were talking about. If you tell me you didn't know what statement I was talking about, I'll sit down. I was very specific. I was very specific that it was the double hearsay statement related to Jeffery Lacasse that we filed our motion in limine on. I was very specific that it applied to this and also the Juvia dinner. Those were the words specifically out of my mouth back there because when she asked the questions of Ms. Adelson, which were completely appropriate, I thought she might be going down this path. And so the first thing in the morning, we went sidebar so I could stop the charade. So that if the court were going to allow it to come in, I would handle it. She stayed silent. And I've been jumping up and down to try to prevent any possible mistrial twice, and still no mention of it. It's completely unfair, completely improper, and it denies him his constitutional right of due process.
Again, that's why I raised the issue. This goes to the fairness aspect of it. We'll take a brief 5-minute recess. If you have any authority you wish to present, I will entertain it further. Everyone can be seated. Unless either party has additional argument, I am prepared to rule at this point.
I did have one thing I wanted to raise that I'm not sure was clear before. Ms. Adelson is still under the state subpoena, so I think she could be brought back for whatever additional questions need to be asked.
As to that point, Mr. Kappelman, the ability to extend immunity you have, Mr. Rauschbaum does not. He calls her as a part of her, as a part of the defendant's case. What is your response to that?
I don't know. I mean, we're still in the state's case, so.
Well, the defense can't call a witness within the state's case.
I know, that's a good point. I just wanted to point out that she is still under my subpoena, so if we get creative, that might be a solution. I don't know, it hasn't been proffered what questions would be asked that weren't asked. I don't know what that is, but maybe there's something that could be worked out if that was Your Honor's ruling, was that would be required.
Mr. Rauschbaum, anything else?
Judge, I'll just rest on 9609, Florida rule and its progeny, and Crawford and its progeny. And what I said before.
Very well. The court's ruling is as follows. The defense's motion in limine went to the state's ability as a part of its case in chief to present testimony from Mr. Lacasse that would be hearsay within hearsay. The motion in limine was granted on those grounds. However, the motion in limine and also the court's ruling did not discuss or limit in any way the state's ability to present this information as impeachment. Ms. Adelson, at this point, she has testified, she has denied the statement taking place whatsoever. However, as it goes to fundamental fairness grounds, which are also a part of the ruling that has to be made, the defense did earlier at sidebar ask if this was going to come up in some way. As it related to substantive evidence, I believe the state responded it was not. The state did not make any representations concerning impeachment. I will find that this did affect the defense's ability, or their strategy, at least in examining the witness, as the witness also can invoke her Fifth Amendment right, and through a separate pleading has stated through counsel that she will invoke any Fifth Amendment right unless she is being granted immunity for that testimony. The ability of the defense to address this matter is compounded by the constitutional right of the witness and their inability to call her. On fundamental fairness grounds, I'm not going to permit the impeachment on this topic. You may proffer the testimony from there. If the state is intending to recall the witness at that point, the issue of impeachment may be revisited. Does everyone understand?
Yes, may I make one clarification for the record?
Go ahead.
It's already on the record. We were at sidebar. What I was asked, my understanding of what I was asked is, was I intending to introduce any hearsay within hearsay through Mr. Lacasse? And my answer was that I would not introduce any hearsay within hearsay without exceptions. I think it was clear what I was intending to do was set up an impeachment through Ms. Adelson by drawing her attention to the specific date and time of the statement and asking her specifically if she made the statement, which she denied.
I find it hard to believe that that doesn't alert the defense, in fairness, that that's what I'm intending to do, and that's what I did in the last trial successfully, which the defense in this case was in attendance at. So I think it's unfair to the state, but I understand Your Honor's ruling and we'll be ready to proceed.
Please bring in the witness so we can go through the proffer. Our words are stock and trade. If you were uncertain, Ms. Kappelman, as to what Mr. Rauschbaum was raising, we probably should have clarified it at that point.
Yes, so.
Please bring in the witness. Also, so we don't have to go through this again, Mr. Rauschbaum, as it pertains to the other rulings in the defense's motion in limine that the court has previously addressed. Although they may not be, certain rulings pertain to the state's ability to present as substantive evidence. You understand this does not affect their ability to present it as impeachment as it pertains to all of the items that have been ruled on previously. June and Chimda, meaning everything that we've been previously addressing through these motions.
Well, they still have to follow the extrinsic evidence rule, collateral evidence rule.
My point being, something that cannot come in substantively can still be impeached with. You understand this?
Can, yes.
I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen.
Right.
But so we're not doing this song and dance about any other matters. All right. If we need to have sidebars and you're attempting to clarify something, if you're asking specifically as to impeachment, you need to be specific as well.
Fair enough, Your Honor.
Ms. Dugan, please bring in Mr. Lacasse. You may be seated, Mr. Lacasse. Ms. Kappelman, you may finish your sequence of questions on the topic you were starting.
Mr. Lacasse, when we broke, we were discussing a statement made to you by Wendi Adelson on July 13th, 2014 at her residence here in Tallahassee. Do you recall which statement?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and what was that statement?
After asking to speak to me confidentially, she told me that last summer that Charles Adelson had looked into all possible options to take care of the Dan Markel problem, including hiring a hitman, and that it would cost about $15,000. I revised the amount. I said potentially that could have been $50,000. I'm unsure of the amount. The rest of the statement, very confident it's true.
So you weren't sure whether she said 15 or 50?
Right.
But she didn't say 15 or 50. She said one or the other.
She said one number that I thought was 15 when I talked to TPD, and later thought that could have been 50.
Okay, I'm with you. And this statement was made in what context? What was her demeanor?
Well, she asked to speak to me confidentially. She was dead serious about it. It was a chilling statement. I had a reaction to it. My stomach flipped. A little scary, a little weird. So it was a very serious statement she's making.
So clearly not a joke.
No, it was not a joke. There are other jokes in that domain. This was completely distinct and discrete from any joke. This was not funny.
And this statement was made within 5 days of Mr. Markel's murder by a hitman?
That's correct.
And was this said in any way in the context of the relocation issue?
Well, what preceded her saying that was a discussion of under what circumstances could she or would she leave Tallahassee, and she stated that the only way to leave Tallahassee was if something happened to Danny. That's what led into the statement I just repeated to you.
Thank you. That's the proffer, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination concerning the subject of the proffer?
I'm sorry,
Any cross-examination as to the subject of the proffer?
yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
The statement was chilling and serious, right?
Yes,
Did you go to the police?
I did not.
You were so scared about the statement that you didn't alert the police the next day, that night?
I did not,
Why not?
because it was a past tense statement, and I thought Charlie was a scary guy, but it was about something supposedly he did last summer. I did not know there was a present case, a present instant threat. I did not know Hitman had visited Tallahassee. I didn't have the context.
So the statement comes out, and you say, all right, not going to call the police. Hey, Wendy, you want to go out tomorrow?
That's not quite how it went.
No, you didn't try to go on a date with her the next day?
No, we did go on a date the next day, and then she cut off all contact without barely talking to me on that date. So I didn't have a lot of time to process it, but it was a shocking enough thing that it took a day or two to process. Also, I had repeated that statement to a friend of mine before the murder, and I didn't get a reaction from her like, this is shocking. I sought feedback from a friend who would verify that I made that statement before the murder, and she didn't say, oh, geez, you should call the police. So it wasn't just me. There was another person that I consulted with because it freaked me out, and we decided I decided after talking to her it was past tense, so probably not that dangerous, and we were really wrong. And maybe I should have called the police.
So Charlie Adelson lets you know that he's has friends in the criminal element, the Cuban criminal element, right?
Yes.
And you know that there's a heated dispute between this family. You testified to it today, a heated dispute.
Yes.
About relocation, about divorce.
Well, the dispute's no longer about relocation, but yes, there's an ongoing litigation for sure.
Right. And then Wendi Adelson tells you that this man, who is part of the criminal element, really looked into hiring a hitman.
She did say that.
And you thought, I'm not going to go to the police on that. That's your testimony, right?
That's the decision I made. It didn't really cross my mind because of the past tense nature of it, and I consulted with a friend, bounced it off of her before the murder, and neither one of us thought, oh, geez, let's call the police. So it's possible that Charlie is so dangerous that I should have called the police, yeah, but I did not.
And so at this point in time, your relationship with Wendi Adelson was really bad, right?
It was hard to tell.
It's hard to tell that it was really bad?
It was a roller coaster ride constantly because you referred to the next night, the next day, the 14th. On the 14th, I got a warm, inviting call from Wendi Adelson, eager to spend time with me. Maybe trying to distract me, I don't know. But
okay. Well, we're going to get to the distracting part.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is all about.
But it wasn't the relationship was not in a great spot. I'll concede that to you.
So
yes.
Your testimony is that when this woman is about to break up with you, when she is avoiding you, when you have just been caught going through her phone and her planning.
How's she avoiding me?
Well,
Mr. Lacasse, you're not here to ask questions.
Yes, sir.
Answer what's asked of you.
Your testimony is that when you are on the outs with her, which the record will show you were during this time period, that she confides in you the most serious, the most important thing in her life. That's your testimony, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
She has a history of boarding out things that aren't in her own self-interest.
Judge, I would ask that to be stricken from the record. It's unresponsive.
This is just a part of the proffer, and if you've reached the end of your cross-examination on the proffer session, we do need to move on.
That's fine, Your Honor.
Mr. Lacasse, or actually Ms. Kappelman,
The court's ruling remains the same. You're not to inquire further as to this subject matter. We will revisit later if it comes to it.
Yes, sir.
Please bring back in the witnesses, or the jurors.
In reference to the celebration dinner?
For one moment, because I don't know what the celebration dinner is all about.
It's in the same motion and eliminate, Judge.
Bring it back up. Number 2, I believe this just concerns statements. It doesn't say anything about celebration.
All rise, jury entering the courtroom.
One moment.
Whoa, back up.
Where is the celebration dinner covered in your motion?
It's in the same motion and eliminate regarding the hearsay statements. There were several of them. The first one was the statement that we just discussed, and the second one is that Charlie Adelson said that he went to dinner with that she told him that Charlie Adelson said it was a celebration dinner. It's in the same motion and eliminate.
However, this statement is being directly attributed to your client that was heard by the witness?
No.
Mr. Lacasse, please step down again.
It's the same exact issue. It's Wendi Adelson telling him what Charlie Adelson said.
Cappleman, response.
Yes, sir. I asked Miss Adelson about the dinner. She acknowledged there was a dinner. She did vomit at the dinner table, but denied calling it a celebration dinner or hearing Charlie Adelson call it a celebration dinner. I anticipate this witness would indicate that it was referred to as a celebration dinner.
Mr. Rauschbaum,
It's the same issue, and you ruled on this issue. It's the same motion in limine.
I'm looking at the line now. All right, Ms. Cappleman, I believe we find ourselves in the same position unless you have an argument which differentiates the television from the celebration dinner.
I think I understand what you mean, Judge. I don't have any additional argument other than this is offered for impeachment. It's not hearsay, not covered by the motion. The appropriate grounds were laid, and it's admissible as impeachment.
Do you wish to proffer the celebration dinner by Mr. Lacasse as well?
No, sir. I think my preference at this point, assuming your ruling will be the same on the celebration dinner, is to have Mr. Lacasse step off the stand, proceed with another witness, and revisit this issue after the lunch break.
Very well. Please bring the jurors back in. You may end your examination in front of them, and then Mr. Rauschbaum will have his opportunity. Well, actually, Mr. Rauschbaum, how long do you believe your cross-examination of the witness will take
I'm a little
in
confused.
front of the jurors?
I'm a little confused. Are you?
The ruling is the impeachment as the celebration dinner is going to be excluded on the same grounds for now. If we need to revisit later, we will, but as to your cross-examination that will be taking place in front of the jurors on the subject matter that's already been covered, how long do you think that's going to take?
Oh, she's going to stop asking questions of this witness.
I believe she just indicated she would.
Okay. For the issues that we've dealt with just now,
Prior to any proffers and sending the jurors out.
I'm not really sure, Your Honor. Probably maybe 30 minutes.
Right, let's bring them back in. You can start your cross. We'll take the lunch break and then pick up from there.
Ready?
Please bring back in the witness.
All rise. You're entering the courtroom.
Everyone can be seated. Bailiff, if you can please instruct Mr. Lacasse to come back in. State have any further direct examination for this witness?
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
You may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Professor Lacasse, good morning.
Good morning.
You met Charlie Adelson one time, right?
That's correct.
It was a trip that you and Wendi took down to South Florida for a day after a spring break with the kids that she taught.
Yeah, we were in Immokalee, and then we went over to Miami, or to Fort Lauderdale and Miami, just for the 11th. That's right.
And you had dinner, you said you had dinner on March 11th of 2014 at a place called Yardbird.
That's correct.
You recall Charlie was in his scrubs?
Don't recall that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And Catherine Magbanowa was at that dinner, right?
She was.
And I think you said that she was bringing up stuff about her ex, right?
Not a lot, just a little bit, but she did bring that up, and I recalled it.
Is it fair to say that she was pushing for information at that dinner
From who?
from Miss Adelson?
I don't recall that.
Well, was she trying to get Miss Adelson to talk about her ex-husband?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall there being a lot of discussion at the dinner about Professor Markel?
Don't recall a lot. It always came up for a minute. It came up in the context of Wendi Adelson's book. Most of it was Charlie talking.
You recall Katie asking questions about how the divorce was going, how he was treating her, where he was. You don't recall any of that happening at the dinner?
I do not recall any of that.
The only thing you recall is her saying something about her ex-husband.
That's what stuck out. We've had previous legal proceedings where I also could not, I can't, it's a dinner 9 years ago. I don't remember a lot of detail of it. And it wasn't long either. It was just an hour.
Isn't it likely that she was talking about her ex-husband and her problems because there was talk about exes?
I mean, that's pure speculation on my part. I don't recall. I do recall some other things we spoke about, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them or not. They involved your client. They weren't. So I'm in my head trying to figure out how much space was there for other stuff. As I previously testified, most of it was Charlie telling us stories, kind of.
But Katie was clearly wanting to bring up the topic, as you said, about her family situation, correct?
Yeah, but I'm talking about 2 or 3 sentences here. I only recalled that in retrospect because there was a murder, and I thought, oh, geez.
And it was important enough for Miss Kappelman to ask you about that, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right? So you remember her talking about her family situation, right?
Yeah, and I also remember Charlie talking about a party he had recently attended. There's a few other random things.
Fair enough. I didn't ask, with all due respect, I didn't ask you that.
Okay.
Let's just stick with the family situation.
Okay.
So Catherine Magbanowa was talking about her family situation, correct?
For 2 or 3 sentences, she mentioned that Sigfredo Garcia, not by name, and the tensions with him. Yes.
Okay. You say that Charlie talked in the hot tub or the pool about having connections to the criminal element. That's what your testimony was, right?
Yes, starting with my initial statement to TPD. Yes, sir.
And you're talking about your statement to TPD after the murder, right?
3 days after the murder.
And after you thought Wendi Adelson was trying to frame you for the murder, right?
I didn't think that in that interview.
Okay.
It took me some time to process.
You're aware that you were called in as a suspect for the murder, right?
Yes.
Okay. And after that point in time is when you gave that statement to TPD regarding what Mr. Adelson said. Just yes or no?
After I was called into the police station?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when I gave my statement at the police station.
Right. What I'm making clear is it's not like you had dinner and were in a hot tub with Charlie Adelson and you went back to Tallahassee and gave the statement then, right?
No, I would have no reason to do that.
I understand that, Professor Lacasse. I'm just trying to make it clear for the jury when you gave TPD this statement.
Yeah.
And the answer is you gave him the statement after the murder and after you were called in as a suspect on that murder.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, do you recall texting Charlie Adelson after you met with him?
I texted Mr. Adelson one time, yes.
Okay. And do you recall saying to him, "Hey, Charlie, it's Jeff," as in Wendy and Jeff. "Hey, man, thanks for your hospitality the other night. Sorry about the clusterfuck with the cab. It was great to finally meet you. I could tell how proud you are of your sister. I am too. She's really one in a million. Take care, dude, and look forward to seeing you again sometime soon." Do you recall texting him that?
I do recall texting him that.
Okay. You like hanging out with the criminal element?
It was my new girlfriend's brother who she was very close with. I've been dating Wendy seriously for 12 days. I didn't think it was right to give a... I was polite rather than honest, let's put it that way. I mean...
Let me ask the question again.
Yeah.
Do you like hanging out with the criminal element?
No, I don't do that.
Did Charlie Adelson text you, or did you text him?
I texted him. I can't remember if that was solicited by Wendi Adelson or not, but I texted him.
It wasn't solicited by Charlie Adelson, right?
No, we never spoke again, though.
Okay. Actually, he texted you back.
Right, I never answered.
And he said, "It was great seeing you. I'm glad you made your flight. Hopefully we can all hang out soon."
Mm-hmm.
Now, you testified that Wendy was a wreck. Hold on one second, sorry. One moment, Your Honor. I've lost my place. You testified about some of these divorce filings on direct, correct?
Yes.
And that Wendy, you testified that Wendy was a wreck about him, right?
Yes.
That's not what you thought in the spring of 2014, though, was it?
You're questioning whether... It is what I thought in spring of 2014. I noticed repeatedly her reacting to motions and litigation and getting very, very upset. I'm not saying there was never any good times, but she was very upset when he filed something.
Do you recall sending an email to Wendi Adelson in March 27th of 2014 where you tell her that she's adapting really well to unpleasant circumstances and that she needs to give herself more credit?
That sounds familiar. I would say it got increasingly worse March, April, May, June in terms of her reactions to the entire situation. But I know I was sending that email, yes, trying to encourage my girlfriend at the time, yes.
Oh, really? It got worse. Filings in March, April, and June.
No, I don't know when the last filing was. Her reactions, not just to filings, but the entire situation. Let me clarify that.
Hold on a second. Would it surprise you that there weren't any filings?
No,
in May or June?
No, I'm aware of that.
Would it surprise you that there's been testimony in this courtroom that actually things got a little better?
Wendy's status didn't get better. My observations of Wendy saw her spiraling downward in that time period is what I was trying to refer to.
Do you recall that in the spring, summer of 2014, Professor Markel asked Wendy's parents to babysit for him?
I didn't know about that, or I don't recall it if I did.
I'm sure you did. Now, do you recall telling law enforcement that your impression was that Professor Markel's filing was going to fail?
Yes, I was repeating things I'd heard from Wendi Adelson, so most of that content that was, I mean...
Sir, I'm just asking you for yes or no questions.
Okay.
Let me follow up of where you get that information from.
Okay.
I know you have an
Yes,
agenda.
yes, I told police that, yes.
Okay. So, you told the police that Wendi wasn't concerned about Professor Markel succeeding
No.
with that motion.
No, she was highly anxious. She was highly anxious.
Did she think that the motion was going to be granted?
I don't think she knew. I think that's what caused the anxiety.
Didn't you tell law enforcement that your impression was that Professor Markel's motion was going to fail?
I did tell law enforcement that, yes.
And didn't you just tell the jury that that impression came from Wendi Adelson?
Well, from my interactions with her and partially my own opinion, to clarify. But yes, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
You also told law enforcement that everyone in the legal community agreed with that assessment.
I didn't speak to everyone in the legal community.
Well, let's read your interview then. And let's see if it refreshes your recollection.
One moment, Your Honor. Being summoned.
You don't recall being recorded where you said, and I quote, everyone in the legal community agreed with that assessment at 2 o'clock on 7/23/14, interview part 1, at 34:35 in the interview. You don't recall saying that?
Can you give me the date of the interview again, please?
7/23/2014, interview part 1, and 3/6/2015, you reiterated it at 34 minutes and 35 seconds into the recording. You don't recall saying that?
Vaguely, I do recall saying something like that. I'm a non-lawyer trying to figure out this situation. Getting different messages from different people.
I have no further questions right now, Your Honor.
You redirect examination.
At the time you were in the hot tub with the defendant, did you know that he was a criminal element? Okay, let me rephrase it. Did you know he was conspiring to commit the murder of Dan Markel?
I had no idea.
All right, and when you were at dinner with he and Catherine Magbanua, did you know that she was conspiring to commit the murder of Dan Markel?
Had no idea.
So you didn't know when you were in the hot tub that you were hanging out with a criminal element in that regard?
No.
Nothing further.
Lacasse, you may step down. You may be recalled at some point. Please call your next witness.
Jeffery Lacasse.
Mr. Lacasse, you remain under oath. You may be seated.
All right, Mr. Lacasse, I want to take you back to July 13th, 2014. This is going to be the Sunday before the homicide that we're here about. Did you see Wendi Adelson that evening at her residence here in Tallahassee?
Yes, after we returned from dinner and a movie, we went back to her residence. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and at some point that evening, did the issue of the relocation battle that was going on back in the summer of 2013 come up?
It did.
And is that the issue we've already...
Confidentially, in a very serious tone of voice, told me that Charlie had investigated all possible options to take care of the problem of Danny Markel, including hiring a hitman, which would cost about $15,000. And I later revised that and thought maybe it was $50,000, but the dollar amount was the only thing in question. She definitely said that Charles Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Danny Markel.
And when did she say Mr. Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman?
When the relocation was denied, the previous summer.
Okay. All right. And the dollar amount, so she either said 15 or 50, you're not sure which?
That's correct.
Okay. And when she said this, what was her demeanor like?
She's very serious.
All right, so definitely not the to be confused with the TV joke.
No, I'd heard that joke repeatedly. I knew that joke. This was something very different. This was chilling, a little scary, made my stomach flip. I found it disturbing. The joke was said in a lighthearted manner, and this was not said in that way. This was serious and said confidentially.
All right, thank you. And I want to, okay, I think we should go from there to the next day, which is going to be July 14th, 2014, the Monday before the murder.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see Wendi Adelson on that day?
Yeah, I can't remember if I contacted her, if she contacted me, but she was excited to see me. And I wasn't so sure about that because the night before we'd had an awkward conversation at the conclusion of that night. And I had told her that she didn't want to do this anymore, that she could just send me a text and I wouldn't, take any offense. We would just, break up. So I didn't get that text. Instead, I talked to Wendi Adelson and she was excited to see me.
All right, so what did you do?
Well, then she needed to call me back, and it went from her enthusiasm about seeing me to let's just meet at yoga tonight, go in separate cars. So there was a real shift in about 30 minutes.
Did you go to yoga?
We did. We went to yoga.
All right, and after yoga, was there a discussion about your relationship and the status of your relationship?
Yeah, a very brief one. I mean, yoga's not a great place to talk, obviously. So while we were sitting there, she seemed very cold, and I kind of got the feeling that it was over, that this was it. So as we walked to the car, I tried to talk to her about the relationship, and that didn't go well. And so I just kind of put up my hands and walked away, feeling sad that this was it.
All right, and as you walked away, was that the end, or was there more conversation after you began to walk
No,
away?
she called out to me, and I walked back towards her, and she was deeply curious. Well, let me back up slightly. During that conversation, she didn't have any interest in spending any time with me for the rest of the week, so it kind of confirmed, this is over.
Mm-hmm.
But then when she called me back, she had a series of detailed questions about what I would be doing on Friday.
And Friday is going to be July 18th, right?
Yes,
And that's the date of the homicide?
that's exactly right.
What were her inquiries of you regarding that date?
I had a trip planned to Tennessee. She was aware that I was planning to leave about 11 a.m. On Friday. I need to get to Atlanta for an early dinner, so with traffic, she knew I was departing at 11. And at the yoga studio or in the parking lot, she had asked if I was still going, if I didn't go, why not, what route I would be taking. A lot of a bizarre amount of interest in that trip that didn't make sense to me at the time, given that she didn't want to spend time with me.
And how does it make sense to you now?
Well, if I had left on my trip at the scheduled time that she had known about for quite a while, I would have driven pretty close to Dan Markel's house about the same time as at the murder, in a similar looking car to the suspect vehicle.
What type of vehicle did you drive?
I drove a 2004 Nissan Sentra that was silver metallic gray color.
So if you had followed your original plans, you would have been passing by the Markel residence or nearby there around the same time as the killers were fleeing?
Yeah, I would have been at Capitol Circle in Thomasville. I'm sure I would have been on the same cell tower, for example. I think my life could have been pretty complicated had I taken my original plans.
All right, so you didn't, I guess, take the original plans.
No, I did not. I had made a last-minute decision the night before to leave Thursday night instead. I had not informed Ms. Adelson about that because we weren't speaking. Actually, no, I don't know that anyone, for sure that anyone in Tallahassee knew I had changed my plans, just the people at the other end.
All right, so you were actually in Tennessee at the time of the homicide.
I was.
And we've heard you were called in as a potential suspect, and apparently named by a Jane McPherson. Do you know who that is?
I do.
Okay, who is that?
That was a friend of Wendi Adelson's, and she was a doctoral student in our program. I had not much of a relationship with her, just a kind of a working relationship. We'd worked on a couple of projects together, but I didn't know her very well at all.
But someone that knew that you had been dating Wendi.
Yeah, I think she was a confidant of Wendi Adelson's, yes, for sure.
Okay, so you get called in, and were you able to provide documentation to show that you were in Tennessee and not in Tallahassee?
Yeah, I was excluded fairly quickly because the investigators found Kmart surveillance footage of me at a Kmart in Tennessee using my credit card with my cell phone showing me there shortly after the murder, so it was impossible that I was the shooter.
All right, and then was there also some similar type coincidences around the time of the trip that the killers made in June?
Yes. On June 6th, I had a business trip to Gainesville, and I departed at 11 a.m. on a Friday, June 6th, which Ms. Adelson would have known about by March. So really, I take 2 trips out of Tallahassee in my car the whole spring and summer semester. And both times, hitmen try to kill Dan Markel.
Okay. Any further contact with Wendi after the yoga date?
We, about 10 days after the murder, she reached out to a mutual friend, and we had a few phone calls.
And during one of those phone calls, did you learn about a dinner where Wendi had become ill at the table?
Yes, I did learn about that.
And what did you learn about that dinner?
That she went out to dinner with Charlie for what he called a celebration dinner. He said something to her. She spontaneously vomited on the table.
And this would have been within how much time after the homicide?
Within a few weeks.
Was it specified that the celebration was in reference to Dan Markel's death as opposed to anything else?
Wasn't specified.
Okay. But whatever it was, that's the dinner where she vomited.
That's right. That's right.
One moment, please. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Let's shift gears a teeny bit.
Okay.
When you and Miss Adelson were dating, there were occasions when she would drive, right?
Yes.
Did she have a good sense of direction?
I don't know.
You're aware that when she was married to, she lived in Professor Markel, she lived on the house on Trescott, right?
Yes.
And when you were dating Wendi, would she often use Trescott as a shortcut to get from one place to another?
She used it a few times when I was in the car, if that's what you're asking. She did that on June 27th, the day we departed to Gainesville at 11 a.m. on a Friday.
I think you said in one of your interviews that she would do that at least 100 times, drive by the house.
That was a figure of speech.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, we'll start with the joke, the
Yes.
bad joke.
Yes.
You mentioned this TV joke, how it was lighthearted, bad humor, certainly in the context of what happened, but it was a joke.
Yeah, it was dark humor, I would say, but it was clearly a joke, yes.
And do you recall that joke being given at that Yardbird dinner?
I don't.
Could it have been given at that Yardbird dinner?
It could have, but I don't recall it, and I actually think I might remember that,
I'm sure you do.
given what happened.
I think one thing that has been established is you believe that Wendi Adelson tried to frame you for Professor Markel's murder, right?
I'm suspicious that there was an effort made in that way, yes.
And so that has affected your viewpoint, correct?
Sure.
Well, let's talk about your viewpoint. And we have to go a little bit back and repeat a couple things to put it in context. So you meet with Charlie Adelson. He tells you that he's he's friends with people in the criminal element. You say thanks for a great meeting, correct? Send him a nice text.
The next day I sent him a text, yes.
You don't go to the police.
No, I don't go to the police.
Okay. You then hear that Charlie's made a joke many times about this TV being cheaper than hiring a hitman.
Heard the joke twice.
Okay. You don't go to the police.
No.
Then in June, at a time when Wendi Adelson is breaking up with you, she sits you down and she says, I have to confide the biggest secret in my life. That a year ago, my brother actually looked into hiring a hitman. That's your testimony here today, right?
You said in June, sir?
In June? I'm sorry, in July.
Okay.
In July.
Can you restate that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll do it again.
I'm sorry.
I'll try to keep it lower this time. In July of 2014,
Yes.
about a week before the murder, when you're breaking up with Wendi Adelson, or things are seriously not good, she sits you down and she says, Jeffrey, I've got to confide in you. My brother actually looked into hiring a hitman. That's your testimony here today.
No, she didn't sit me down. She said it in passing, and she had a habit of blurting out things that weren't in her own self-interest. But she did do that. She did make that statement, yes, sir.
And it was chilling to you.
It was.
Unlike the joke, you thought it was real.
It was real, yes.
Did you go to the police?
I did not.
And then you break up.
Kind of. She strung me along for another week, as you know. Mostly, yeah, but kind of.
Well, the murder happens and you get called in as a suspect of the murder.
Right.
And you're upset at that point.
Yes, I was upset.
And you have a first interview with the police, and then you have a second interview with the police.
Yes.
And during the second interview with the police, you talk solely about Wendi Adelson.
Yeah, I think that's right. I felt like I needed to say they needed to look at Wendi Adelson as well. That was the point of that talk. Yes, sir.
That was the point of that talk.
Yes.
And you even, you don't mention actually Charlie Adelson at all in that second interview.
I already had done so, so yes, you're correct.
So that second interview, you talk just about Wendi Adelson. And in fact, you're so uncomfortable in the interview. You tell the police that. You say, I'm so uncomfortable, and Detective Isom asked you why. Do you recall that?
It wasn't a Detective Isom.
Okay, I'm sorry. The detective who was interviewing you asked you why.
I don't, you have to remind me on that.
Well, let me remind you what you
Yeah.
said. You said, because it's hard for me, because if she would take me back right now, I would go back to her.
Yeah, I was still under her spell to some degree. I would say I was fairly pathetic at that point. I would acknowledge that. Yeah.
So let me understand this, because I want to make sure I've got it right. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sure.
Wendi Adelson has told you that her brother looked into hiring a hitman sometime in 2013. He gets murdered.
He does.
You go to an interview, and during that interview, you're still thinking about staying with Wendi Adelson. You don't want to talk badly about her because you still want to be with her.
You're talking about this July 23rd interview specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, it only been a week. It was still pretty fresh. I was still pretty mixed up. That's right.
Okay, well, let's see how mixed up you were after that. So then you're clearly broken up at that point. We can agree, right?
Actually, I would say yes functionally, but I've testified before that Ms. Adelson and I had conversations in August where she behaved as if we were still together, and we had a conversation that finally ended it, initiated by me. Now, practically, we were broken up.
You never went on a date with her again, right?
Never saw her again other than in our courtroom, right?
Fair enough. Then she tells you, according to you, that my client, Charlie Adelson, says that she had a celebration dinner with Charlie, and that the celebration dinner was about the murder of Professor Markel.
I don't recall saying that last part.
But that's how you took it, right?
I worried that was the case. I told the police, and my understanding is Wendi conceded she threw up on a dinner table.
Do you know that the first time you told the police that was in March of 2015?
I do know that.
So what happened in September of 14? What happened in October of 14? What happened in November of 14? What happened in December of 14? January of 15? February of 15? You still didn't think that was important to tell the police?
I'm happy to answer that. I think you deserve an explanation on that. You may have noticed in my March 6, 2015 interview, I come in with notes, big pile of notes. Those notes are written in July of August. They're written pretty quick after the murder. I didn't come in right away, partially because I was scared of your client. I was scared of the repercussions if I went on the record further about my suspicion. So I was reluctant to come back in because I was frankly scared.
Oh, I get it. You were scared of him in August of 14, but you weren't scared of him in March of 2015.
Now I decided to man up. I decided it was a homicide and needed to man up. That's the decision I came
Right.
to.
You weren't scared to tell him that my client had actually looked into a hitman a year earlier. That didn't scare you. You could tell him that in July.
No, I was.
Hold on, sir. Let me ask the question.
Fair enough.
In July of 2014, you told police that Charlie Adelson, you heard, actually looked at hiring a hitman. You weren't scared to tell him that.
I asked for police protection. I was scared.
You told them that in July of 2014. Isn't that correct?
Yes, in the same conversation, I said, can I get some assurances? Can I get some protection? I have something I want to tell you. I'm scared to tell you.
But you were too scared to tell them about a celebration dinner comment, and you waited almost half a year to tell them?
Well, I did wait half a year to tell them, but the notes I brought in were written right after that interview. I also wanted to get my thoughts together because I thought this day might come. And in those first two interviews, there was a lot going on. It was pretty traumatic, so I wanted to collect my thoughts. So that's what I was doing, in addition to being pretty frightened and having to get over that idea.
Isn't it true that those comments never happened, and you're upset because you believe that this family tried to frame you for murder?
Everything I'm saying is true.
I'm sure it is. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Move to strike the I'm sure it is comment.
I'll withdraw it.
It's withdrawn. Please disregard, members of the jury.
I have no further comments for this.
Questions?
Or questions.
Redirect examination.
This may seem like a fine point, but I want to make sure it's crystal clear. When Mr. Rashbaum was asking you about the hot tub conversation, Mr. Rashbaum said that his client said that he was friends with people in the criminal element. Is that exactly what was said?
The word I recall is he had connections and friends on both sides of the tracks.
Okay. Connections to
Criminal
the criminal
elements. And
element.
particularly, there was the Cuban neighborhood comment that I repeated to the TPD later.
Gotcha.
Actually, on July 21st, first interview, I mentioned that comment.
Okay. How many pages of notes do you have in reference to this case?
Like right now or over the last 9 years?
I mean, kind of over the last 9 years.
Yeah. I'm a researcher by training. I'm an analytic person by nature. So those 6 months was pretty obsessive. I was reviewing every text message, every email, writing. I condensed it down. I think if you watch the videotape, you would see me bring in 3, 4, 5 pages. But I would say I wrote probably 100 pages before I came in to see them the third time.
Going through every receipt,
Yes.
every detail,
Yes.
partially out of what? What motivation?
Well, pretty traumatic, so fear was part of it. Like, if they can catch the people that did this, I'll be safe. That was a big piece of it. Also, this was a brutal murder, and I wanted to see justice done, and I did not want to leave something sitting on the shelf. If I was in the possession of something that could help, I wanted to help.
And isn't it true that you didn't know what was going to end up being important out of all the nuggets you dug out of the phone and everywhere
I
else?
had no idea, and I also told them repeatedly, I hope and pray this wasn't Wendi and Charlie Adelson. But just in case, here's the stuff I have.
And Mr. Rashbaum asked you about why didn't you go to the police when you learned that Mr. Adelson had in fact looked into hiring a hitman. Just to reiterate, the statement was made the Monday before the murder, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's the statement where Wendy's relating it to you.
Yes.
All right, so that's going to be in 2014.
Yes.
Okay, and she's making a statement about something that occurred in what year?
2013.
All right, why didn't you go to the police with this information?
Because it was a past tense thing she was reporting. I did not sense there was a present danger. I didn't know hitmen had already visited Tallahassee. I didn't realize there was an active murder plot.
In hindsight, should you have gone to the police with this information?
Yes.
One moment, please. Nothing else, Your Honor.
Mr. Lacasse, you may step down. Mr. Rashbaum, do you have something that you need to raise?
Maybe we go sidebar briefly.
Approach. Jury room.
Mr. Rashbaum would like to inquire of the witness about the notes. We figured we'll do that now since he's here.
Without the jury or with?
With.
Okay.
It'll be quick, Your Honor, I promise.
One question that becomes 9?
I didn't say that. Louder, please. Just keep it, as we're closing.
These questions pretty soon.
I'm saying it's really good.
All rise, jury entering courtroom.
Everyone may be seated. Members of the jury, the defense is going to have a very brief recross of Mr. Lacasse.
Mr. Lacoste, those notes, pages and pages of notes, did you provide them to the prosecutors?
No, they were destroyed. I used them to guide my interviews with investigators, and then I destroyed them.
You destroyed them?
Yes.
Why'd you destroy them?
I don't know they would have been of any use to anyone else. They were just little talking points for me. We went through every single thing on my notes. It was on videotape, and then I got rid of the notes.
So when you were on the videotape, you were reading your notes?
Well, I was using them as prompts to remember to talk about each thing. The investigator guided the interview, so sometimes we didn't stick straight to him, but I made sure everything on the note got discussed with investigators.
But we wouldn't know that because we can't see him today, right?
No, but you can watch the videotape of my interview with Craig Isom and see what's on the notes.
Oh, I can see the writing on that videotape?
I guess not, but that's the material that was covered.
Sir, truth is, you destroyed those notes, and we can't review them, right?
Yes.
No further questions.
Redirect this government.
Was was there any law or instruction from a law enforcement officer requiring you to do something with your personal notes?
No, I don't think I even needed to create notes. I chose to organize my thoughts to talk to Investigator Isom, but it was to help me make sure I covered what I wanted to cover. And of course, he ended up asking most of the questions anyway. That's how it works.
And everything in the notes is included in the interview?
Yes.
It was provided to us?
Yeah.
Okay, nothing further, thank you.
Yes, that's it, sir. Please call your next witness.
Ryan Fitzpatrick?